I've always been captivated by that spark of a new idea, that moment when a solution to a problem just clicks. But the journey from that initial spark to, well, a thriving venture, it feels less like a straight line and more like trying to find your way through a really dense, often foggy landscape. Where do we even begin to find our bearings in that wilderness, let alone build something truly impactful?
That's a profound question, and it really hits at the core challenge of entrepreneurship, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Today, on the deep dive, we're tackling exactly that. How do we decode the DNA of these dynamic ventures? Now, we're not offering some kind of magic bullet, but rather a curated startup playbook, if you will. We're pulling together the most potent wisdom from a diverse collection of really brilliant minds. We'll be connecting the rigorous day-to-day methodologies like those from Eric Ries's The Lean Startup with, say, Peter Thiel's more expansive strategic vision from 0 to 1, and then anchoring it all in the frankly brutally honest psychological and leadership insights Ben Horowitz shares and the hard thing about hard things.
Okay, so our mission then is to distill these, well, varied perspectives into a coherent framework, sort of offering you a shortcut, maybe, to understanding the foundational principles that can help any venture not just survive, but really thrive. So whether you're dreaming of a moonshot or maybe scaling an existing business or even just curious about what makes these dynamic ventures tick, let's unpack this intersection of strategy, execution, and leadership. It sounds fascinating.
It really is. And what's truly fascinating here is how these seemingly different philosophies, the nimble experimentation of Ries, the almost monopolistic ambition Thiel talks about, and the kind of leadership resilience Horowitz champions, they don't just coexist, they actually powerfully reinforce each other. We'll explore these threads today, connecting dots you might not expect, all through this lens of building lasting, innovative ventures that, truly change the game.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. When we talk about starting a venture, the first thought almost always is, what product or service am I selling? It's like the most natural starting point, right?
It is. It's intuitive.
But our sources, they suggest we need to go much, much deeper than just the immediate offering. It's about understanding the core purpose, that fundamental why behind what you're doing.
Exactly.
Not just the immediate solution, but the long-term impact, the true problem you're solving for people. Now, that shift from thinking about the widget to the deeper need, it makes perfect sense on paper. But practically speaking, how difficult is it for companies, especially, established ones deeply entrenched in a specific product, to truly pivot their entire mindset like that? What are the biggest internal hurdles you've seen?
That's a really crucial question because it gets right to the heart of strategic thinking versus just operational efficiency. Professor Michael Porter, for instance, his foundational work, including concepts touched upon in Seven Powers, makes this critical distinction. Operational excellence is not strategy.
Okay, say more about that. Operational excellence isn't strategy.
Right. He argues that while improving processes, making things faster, or reducing costs, those are all valuable things, absolutely. But if those improvements can be easily copied by competitors, they aren't really strategic. They don't contribute to a long-term defensible competitive advantage. True strategy, instead, aims for enduring value, something that inherently sets you apart, and is frankly incredibly difficult for others to replicate.
Okay.
And this ties in perfectly with Theodore Levitt's powerful warning in Marketing Myopia about companies sometimes unknowingly imprisoning themselves in a tight product orientation.
Marketing myopia, right. I remember that concept.
Levitt famously pointed out that the railroads didn't fail because the need for transportation diminished. No, it was because they defined themselves as being in the railroad business.
Not the transportation business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not the transportation business. He argued the oil industry, for example, should think of itself as fulfilling people's transportation needs, or maybe energy needs, not just selling oil. This kind of reorientation shifts the focus from a narrow product to the broader customer need. And that just opens up far more opportunities for growth, for innovation, and for strategic resilience. The biggest hurdle, you asked, often it's institutional inertia. It's a fear of disrupting what is working, even if that thing is maybe on a path to eventual obsolescence.
So it's really about seeing beyond the immediate product to the fundamental human desire or problem you're addressing. It reminds me of the ethos Howard Schultz describes at Starbucks in Pour Your Heart Into It. He wasn't just selling coffee.
Right, not just coffee.
If it were just coffee, there'd be another commodity provider. Right. Instead, he envisioned creating a third place, a kind of community hub between home and work. Now, that's a fundamental purpose, a why, that goes way beyond just a beverage. It taps into a deeper need for connection, for belonging. And that inspiring why not quote, often attributed to Robert F. Kennedy, it really captures that spirit of possibility, that drive to envision and create something that hasn't existed before. It's about challenging the status quo, imagining a better future where your venture provides a unique kind of value.
Exactly. And this grander vision, it isn't just about, feel-good branding. It has very tangible implications for how a company operates and how it perceives its role. Peter F. Drucker, in The Practice of Management, he underscores that a business is society's wealth-creating and wealth-producing organ.
A wealth-creating organ. That's a strong statement.
It is. And it's not just philosophical. It means that management's responsibility extends beyond merely generating profit. It's also about ensuring growth and contributing positively to society, creating this sustainable ecosystem of value. It's about how the entire enterprise contributes. To illustrate this, think about the subtle but powerful impact of a company's name. Built to Last highlights this. Burroughs, the company, remained the Burroughs Adding Machine Company until 1953. Imagine the mindset of an employee there.
Right. I make adding machines.
Exactly. Now contrast that with International Business Machines, IBM. That name had a very different impact on its employees' sense of future, of ambition. The name itself signals a grander vision, right? It allows for a broader scope of innovation and impact, moving beyond just one single product. And this vision of creating something entirely new, of seeing beyond the obvious, of fundamentally altering how people live or work, that's a core idea in Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. He challenges us to move from 0 to 1, from nothing to something truly new, rather than just 1 to N, which is replicating what already exists.
Okay, so we've honed that foundational why. We've expanded our purpose beyond just the product. We're starting to lay some crucial groundwork here. But even with the clearest vision, the reality is the marketplace is crowded. It can feel like stepping into a battle already in progress. How do we avoid just, being another fish fighting for the same scraps? How do we not just survive, but truly thrive? This seems like where we need to shift from just competing to actually creating something different.
You've absolutely hit on the essence of the next strategic leap. This is where the concept of blue ocean strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Mauborgne really comes into play. They explain that instead of battling it out in red oceans, these existing market spaces where companies compete fiercely, often turning the waters bloody with competition.
Yeah, brutal image.
It is. True innovation, they argue, lies in finding or creating entirely new market space, what they call blue oceans.
Yeah.
And the key defining feature here is something called value innovation, which means simultaneously pursuing differentiation and low cost.
Okay, hold on. Differentiation and low cost. That sounds counterintuitive. Usually you pick one, right?
Yeah.
Differentiate and charge more, or be the low-cost leader.
That's the traditional trade-off, yes. But value innovation challenges that very trade-off. It's about offering superior value to the customer, but doing it at a lower cost structure, thereby opening up this vast, uncontested market space.
That really does upend traditional thinking. Breaking that value-cost trade-off is, genuinely surprising and honestly a bit intimidating to even imagine. But for a startup or even an established company looking to innovate, how do you even begin to identify a potential blue ocean without, risking everything on some unproven path? It sounds like a massive leap of faith.
Well, it's maybe less a leap of faith and more a systematic approach to value creation.
Yeah.
Kim and Mauborgne advocate what they call a 4 actions framework. Think of it like this. 1, eliminate. Which factors that the industry takes for granted should just be eliminated entirely? Think about Cirque du Soleil getting rid of animal acts and star performers. Huge cost for traditional circuses.
Right, okay. Eliminate. What's next?
2, reduce. Which factors should be reduced well below the industry standard? Cirque du Soleil, for instance, reduce the number of tent shows.
Yeah.
The sheer number of acts compared to a 3-ring circus.
Reduce.
Got it. 3, raise. Which factors should be raised well above the industry standard? For Cirque, this was raising the artistic quality, the storytelling element.
Okay, makes sense.
And finally, 4, create. Which new factors should be created that the industry has never offered before? Cirque created a whole theatrical experience storyline, original music, sophisticated sets appealing to a more adult theater-going audience.
Wow. Eliminate, reduce, raise, create. That framework helps you systematically rethink the boundaries.
Exactly. It helps you reconstruct market boundaries. You give compelling examples like Yellowtail wine. Yellowtail simplified the whole wine selection process, created an easy-drinking, fruity wine that appealed to beer drinkers and new wine consumers, rather than trying to compete on traditional wine expert stuff.
Yeah, they made wine less intimidating.
Precisely. Or Salesforce.com. They eliminated the need for expensive on-premise software, the IT headaches. They reduced the cost and complexity while creating a highly accessible, subscription-based cloud service. That was unheard of for CRM back then. This wasn't just tweaking an existing product. It was totally reimagining the value proposition and the delivery model.
That's a fantastic breakdown of how to practically approach value innovation. And here's where it gets really interesting. You mentioned this earlier. Blue ocean strategy isn't just for the scrappy startups, is it? Incumbents, these big established companies, they can also create these blue oceans, which really challenges the conventional wisdom that only new entrants can truly disrupt markets.
Indeed. And often, incumbents have the resources and the market reach to execute these blue ocean moves with even greater impact. Think about the IBM PC back in 1982. It dramatically expanded the home computing market, instead of tightly controlling every single component, which was typical for IBM back then.
Right, the walled garden approach.
Yeah. They offered a far more open architecture. They standardized the operating system. They allowed outsiders to write software. They enabled third parties to develop peripherals. This strategic move kept costs and the price low while simultaneously offering customers way more utility, flexibility, scale.
Yeah.
They basically created a vast new market for personal computing. It was a classic blue ocean move.
Building on the early success of Apple II, right?
Absolutely. The Apple II itself saw incredible growth, landed Apple on the Fortune 500 incredibly fast after going public. And this strategic goal of creating something entirely new, something so differentiated, it's almost a creative monopoly. That's exactly what Peter Thiel is talking about in 0 to 1.
The creative monopoly.
Yeah. His work suggests that a lot of people have this disbelief in secrets, which leads them to have faith in efficient markets. But Thiel argues, look at financial bubbles, the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble. Markets aren't always efficient. He believes the future holds many secrets. They can be uncovered and exploited by those willing to look for them, and that's how you create these new valuable spaces. Thiel argues the greatest value comes from these unique, monopolistic innovations, not from just competing in established markets.
So less competition, more creation.
Exactly. Think about Elon Musk's vision for SpaceX, detailed in the Elon Musk biography. He wanted to be the Southwest Airlines of space, not by buying existing rockets, no, by building their own engines, fine-tuning assembly, making rockets faster, cheaper, aiming for multiple launches a month. That was audacious.
Totally audacious.
It was about creating a whole new economic reality in space travel, making it accessible, affordable, not just competing within the existing expensive government-dependent aerospace framework. That's a classic example of creating a creative monopoly by delivering unprecedented value and just redefining an entire industry.
Okay, so we've identified our deeper purpose. We've explored how to carve out a truly unique market space, maybe a blue ocean, maybe aiming for that Thiel-style creative monopoly. But once you have that unique idea, that potential new space, how do you navigate the existing competitive landscape? Because it doesn't just disappear. It still feels like a constant strategic chess game, right? Every move you make impacts rivals. Their moves impact you. How do you play to win without just being constantly reactive?
It absolutely is a chess game, and a really complex one. It demands proactive decision-making, not just reacting. The book Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and Roger L. Martin, it emphasizes that strategy is about making a clear set of 5 interdependent choices.
5 choices.
Okay. 1, a winning aspiration. What does winning look like? 2, where to play which markets, segments, geographies. 3, how to win there. What's your competitive advantage? 4, what capabilities do you need? And 5, what management systems are required to support it all?
That sounds comprehensive.
It is, but what's really powerful in their framework is that where to play choices are equally about where not to play.
Where not to play. That's interesting.
Yeah, this idea of deliberately choosing not to compete in certain areas or against certain rivals is incredibly powerful, especially for a new venture with limited resources. It creates focus. It allows you to concentrate those precious resources where they can have the most impact instead of getting dragged into unwinnable or just irrelevant battles.
Where not to play. That's a powerful, almost counterintuitive idea, especially today when everyone seems to chase every opportunity. It forces a kind of discipline. It could stop you from spreading yourself too thin or, entering battles you just can't win. It actually reminds me of Sun Tzu, in The Art of War, talking about manipulating the enemy, using deception, leveraging strategic potential with precise timing. It's all about understanding the field, knowing when to appear strong when you're weak or near when you're far to control the dynamic. This deep understanding of the competitive terrain your opponent's likely moves. It's critical. It's not just about what you do, but how you anticipate what others will do.
Exactly. And Michael Porter, again, in Competitive Strategy, he further stresses the importance of buyer selection, especially as competitive pressures increase, like in mature markets.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about selling to anyone who'll buy. It's about identifying and ideally locking in good buyers, buyers who offer long-term profitability and strategic value. That optimizes your long-term position.
So picking your customers strategically, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Porter argues that the attractiveness of any industry is basically a function of 5 forces: the threat of new entrants, the bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of suppliers, the threat of substitute products or services, and the intensity of rivalry among existing competitors. Understanding these forces helps you make those crucial where to play and how to win choices.
Okay, so it's about analyzing the whole structure of the industry.
Precisely. And to illustrate this strategic chess game, think about those intense negotiations described in the Everything Store between Amazon and ToysRUs.com. Jeff Bezos famously made a big show of keeping one chair open at the conference table for the customer.
Right, I remember reading that.
His focus was relentlessly on comprehensive selection and low prices, above everything else. That wasn't just theatrics. It showed his deep strategic intent to prioritize the customer experience above maybe short-term partner demands. He also famously said something like, "We don't have a single big advantage, so we have to weave a rope of many small advantages."
Weaving a rope, that's a great metaphor.
It is, and it contrasts sharply with, say, the competitive environment in China compared to Silicon Valley, as noted in blitzscaling. In China, companies apparently put teams on anything that has traction, leading to this incredibly fierce landscape where fast follower strategies are common. That's quite different from Silicon Valley's more talent-precious environment. So it highlights that while the principles of competitive strategy are universal, how you apply them, the intensity, it varies hugely by market context and what resources you actually have. So whether you're Thiel building that creative monopoly or Lafley crafting winning aspiration, you're constantly playing this intricate chess game.
Okay, so we've got this robust strategic foundation now. A clear vision, a deep sense of purpose, maybe a unique market space like a blue ocean that Thiel would appreciate. But strategy is one thing. How do we turn these big ideas into actual tangible products and services? And crucially, how do we keep them evolving and adapting in a world that just changes constantly? It sounds like it has to be this ongoing process of trial and error, build, measure, learn, which really feels like the heartland of Eric Ries and the lean startup methodology.
It is indeed a continuous cycle of learning and adaptation. And this is exactly where Eric Ries's methodologies move us from that grand strategy down to the granular execution. Strategic flexibility highlights how everyday innovation, the kind driven by shared knowledge and bottom-up improvements, is absolutely vital. It's not just about the big top-down initiatives. It's the constant incremental improvements made by individuals and teams actually doing the work.
People on the ground.
Exactly. The sources also introduced this crucial distinction made by James March back in '91 between exploration and exploitation. Exploration is about searching for new knowledge. It's often higher risk, involves more assumptions versus known facts. Exploitation is about using your existing knowledge more efficiently.
Exploration versus exploitation. Okay.
Highly exploratory projects, while definitely riskier, also offer far greater long-term learning value. They can lead to more distinct competitive advantages if they succeed. And this whole iterative process, building something, learning from it, adapting, is central to what Eric Ries advocates in the lean startup. It's his build, measure, learn feedback loop. It's about designing experiments to actively test your hypotheses about the business model, rather than just blindly executing some static plan you wrote months ago.
Right. It's not about just launching and hoping. It's about launching and learning. This speaks directly to the heart of continuous learning. You can't just build it once and declare victory. It's like an ongoing conversation with your market, with your customers, constantly refining what you offer based on real feedback. It's about being agile enough to pivot if the data tells you to, and humble enough to learn from failures. And sometimes those failures are just necessary stepping stones, right?
Absolutely. They're data points. And this becomes even more critical when you're confronting what Clayton Christensen in The Innovator's Dilemma calls disruptive innovation. He explains how radical technologies think flash memory compared to traditional disk drives back in the day often require established firms to create entirely separate, organizationally independent groups to succeed.
Why separate groups?
Because their existing structures, their processes, their values, they're all optimized for their core, sustaining business. They simply can't easily adapt to the very different demands, often lower margins, initially smaller markets of these disruptive innovations. The existing organization might actually reject the disruptive thing because it doesn't fit the current model. The book also uses the powerful technology S-curve framework.
The S-curve. Remind me how that works.
Sure, it plots performance, how good a technology is against effort or time invested. Initially, progress is slow and difficult. That's the flat bottom of the S. The new tech is often clumsy, expensive. Then you hit an inflection point, and there's rapid, almost exponential growth. The technology matures, finds its market. That's the steep part of the S. But eventually, diminishing returns set in. The curve flattens out again at the top. More investment yields smaller gains.
Okay, so progress isn't linear.
Not at all. And Christensen's genius was showing that visionary leaders don't wait for their current technology's S-curve to completely flatten out.
Yep.
They actively look for the next S-curve. Even when that new thing looks inferior or unprofitable in its infancy, they know that's where the future competitive advantage lies.
So they're jumping curves, essentially.
Exactly. To illustrate this, think back to the IBM PC development we mentioned from 7 Powers. To keep costs low, meet that crazy one-year deadline, IBM abandoned all sorts of usual practices. Don Estridge and his team made this Herculean effort, demonstrating radical flexibility, embracing exploration, really atypical for IBM at the time. They basically jump-started a new S-curve for personal computing.
Right.
On the flip side, consider the NMMI experience with GM, also in 7 Powers. It illustrates how challenging it is to make process improvements, even really good ones, a truly unyielding competitive barrier over time. It emphasizes that even seemingly efficient operational excellence can eventually be mimicked if the underlying strategic barriers aren't strong enough. So this continuous cycle, innovation, learning, willingness to shed old practices, embrace experimentation like Ries, suggests that's how ventures keep moving forward and stay relevant.
Okay, so you've covered this relentless cycle of innovation and learning, keeping the product fresh, very much in the spirit of Eric Ries. But a brilliant product, no matter how continuously refined, is still just a brilliant idea until it finds its audience. And, critically, until it scales effectively. This brings us to what might be one of the most underestimated engines of venture success. How do we actually acquire and grow that customer base, especially when you're starting with nothing but a great concept?
This is where Peter Thiel, again, offers a really provocative, yet I think incredibly insightful, counter-narrative to how many founders instinctively think. 0 to 1 makes this very strong point. Superior sales and distribution by itself can create a monopoly, even with no product differentiation.
Whoa. Okay, say that again. Superior sales and distribution can create a monopoly even without a better product.
That's what Thiel argues. It's a truly radical notion for many founders, isn't it? We're often taught, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. Product is king.
Right.
But Thiel says, hold on. A brilliant product that's poorly distributed is basically a secret that dies in silence. Think about all those technically superior products that just languished because they couldn't cut through the noise, couldn't reach the people who actually needed them. Conversely, he argues, even a merely good product with exceptional distribution can absolutely dominate a market.
That really challenges how we prioritize early efforts then.
It does. Thiel emphasizes that distribution is often overlooked, maybe seen as less glamorous than product development, but it's paramount for success. He introduces 2 critical metrics to track distribution effectiveness: customer lifetime value, CLV, the total net profit you expect to earn, on average, from a single customer over their entire relationship with you, and customer acquisition cost, CLC, how much you spend, on average, to acquire that new customer. The fundamental rule is simple. Your CLV must exceed your CAC for the business model to be sustainable.
CLV CAC. Makes sense.
And the higher your product's price, the higher the potential CLV, which means the more it makes sense to invest in things like personal sales, more complex distribution channels, because the potential return from each customer justifies that higher acquisition cost.
That's a powerful statement, that sales can be the ultimate differentiator, maybe even trumping the product itself. It definitely flips the script. So, if personal sales are so crucial for these higher value products, how do you scale that effectively? Especially when you're starting small. That's a huge challenge many new ventures face. They often try to go for the big whale, the huge enterprise deal, way too soon.
And that's often a recipe for frustration, if not failure. It's about being strategic and methodical. The book elaborates on personal sales as a highly effective distribution method, especially for products with, say, mid-range deal sizes, maybe $10,000 to $100,000. The real challenge isn't just making one complex sale. It's establishing a repeatable process for a sales team to reach a wide audience effectively.
A repeatable process.
Exactly. Thiel gives a great example with Box, the cloud storage company. Initially, they didn't try to sell to Fortune 500 CIOs right out of the gate. No way. Instead, they focused on selling small accounts to very specific niche user groups who had acute file sharing problems, like the Stanford Sleep Clinic, where researchers needed a secure, compliant way to store sensitive experimental data.
Ah, targeting the specific pain point.
Precisely. They perfected their pitch, their product market fit in these smaller, targeted engagements. Only after establishing these smaller, successful relationships and building credibility did they scale up to pitch an enterprise-wide solution for Stanford University as a whole. Trying to sell the university president on day one probably would have failed miserably. They lacked the proof points, the perfected sales process. This methodical, targeted approach to personal sales was absolutely key to Box eventually becoming a multi-billion-dollar business.
That's a great case study in starting small and focused before scaling distribution.
It is. And as another illustration of ingenious customer acquisition, think about Sam Walton's strategy for Walmart, described in Sam Walton, Made in America. They started underfinanced and undercapitalized in these remote small communities. They were forced to be incredibly ingenious with their limited resources. Their saturation strategy, building stores in clusters around slightly larger towns, leveraged word-of-mouth advertising massively. It saved them a fortune in marketing costs.
So they created density.
Exactly. It allowed them to fly under everybody's radar, and though they were just too big and dominant to catch. This also echoes, in a way, the rise of fintech. These financial technology innovations are often growing fastest, where traditional financial systems don't meet the demand adequately. They might have a higher upfront investment, sure, but often achieve a lower cost per new customer relationship in the long run. And this forces the incumbent banks to react, maybe investing in defensive and cannibalistic startups themselves, as discussed in the technological revolution in financial services. So it all comes back to understanding your cost of acquisition, your customer's lifetime value, and then ruthlessly optimizing your distribution channel for those numbers. It's pure Thiel logic.
Okay, the world moves fast, markets shift constantly. This demands the kind of agility that, again, Eric Ries really emphasizes. How do successful ventures maintain that operational agility? How do they adapt to constant change without losing their strategic direction or their core identity? It feels like a really delicate balance, especially when you're growing rapidly and things get more complex.
It truly is a high-wire act, and the very act of growing often introduces new layers of complexity that challenge that agility. Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal and his co-authors, it highlights this critical insight. While new technologies promise to make us better at what we've always done, they also simultaneously imbue our operating environment with escalating nonlinearity, complexity, and unpredictability.
Escalating nonlinearity. Okay, unpack that a bit.
It means things aren't straightforward cause and effect anymore. Speed and interdependence, everything's connected. I mean, any single action is now linked to vastly more potential outcomes than even a few decades ago. It's no longer a predictable linear world, if it ever truly was. And this escalating complexity makes traditional top-down, reductionist approaches to management less and less effective. Because no single manager, no matter how brilliant, can possibly foresee or control all the potential interactions and consequences. You just can't issue an order from the top and reliably predict the outcome in such a dynamic system.
So it's not just about adopting new tools or faster processes. It's about fundamentally reshaping how the organization itself is structured, how it operates, its culture, to embrace this complexity and unpredictability. It sounds like a profound shift away from a rigid hierarchical command and control model to something much more, I don't know, distributed and adaptable, like a network.
Exactly, like a network, or perhaps better, a team of teams.
Right.
The book notes that the connectivity of trust and purpose imbues teams with an ability to solve problems that could never be foreseen by a single manager. The solutions often emerge almost organically as the bottom-up result of interactions rather than from top-down orders. This really emphasizes a shift from rigid hierarchies to flexible, empowered teams that share a common purpose and, crucially, a high degree of trust.
Trust and purpose is the connective tissue.
Precisely. When information flows freely and individuals genuinely trust each other, they are much better equipped to respond effectively to emergent challenges and opportunities. It mirrors the rapid iterations of a lean startup, but at an organizational scale. This aligns perfectly with the idea of organizational learning, where that everyday innovation thrives on mutual trust and ready information exchange, as explored back in strategic flexibility. It creates an environment where everyone feels empowered and indeed obligated to be a sensor, a problem solver.
Can you give a concrete example of this kind of emergent adaptability?
Sure. Consider the incredible story of Amazon Web Services, AWS, detailed in the Everything Store. AWS didn't start as some grand strategic plan to sell cloud computing. It began as an internal solution for Amazon's own burgeoning infrastructure needs.
Right, they needed it for their own retail site.
Yes, exactly. Amazon built these robust, scalable computing capabilities for its own operations. And then they recognized an emergent opportunity. They realized other companies, especially startups, had the same infrastructure headaches. So they evolved this internal capability into a massive, independent business selling basic computing, power storage, processing to others. Startups like Pinterest, Instagram, huge entities like Netflix, even NASA and the CIA came to rely heavily on AWS. This wasn't some planned pivot from day one. It was an incredibly agile response to an emergent market need, demonstrating profound operational adaptability. They created an entirely new market out of their own internal capabilities.
That's amazing adaptability.
It is. And Jeff Bezos' leadership style, his ability described as being frequently on target with his criticisms, even, spontaneously writing solutions on whiteboards during meetings. It underscores the need for deep, responsive engagement from leadership to foster this kind of agility, rather than just dictating solutions from on high. It's about being deeply involved in the messy details, understanding the emerging needs, and empowering the teams to actually find the solutions.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly, because building a venture, as we've discussed, inevitably hits hard things. Moments of intense pressure, unexpected failures, critical decisions that can make or break everything. This is where the rubber really meets the road, where leaders' true character is forged. And this feels like the territory where Ben Horowitz's perspective, his book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, really shines. What do our sources say about the kind of leadership required to not just survive these struggles, but to actually navigate them and ultimately triumph?
This is absolutely where the strategic frameworks, the lean methodologies, they all encounter the raw reality of human endurance, of decision-making under extreme duress. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, former Navy SEALs, drives home this point. A leader's attitude is paramount. It determines the unit's success or failure. Leaders must never be satisfied, they must continuously seek to improve performance, and crucially, they must take full responsibility, extreme ownership for everything within their domain. No excuses.
Owning everything, the good and the bad.
Everything. From the grand strategy down to the smallest detail of execution. And this concept, it actually extends beyond just their direct reports. Peter F. Drucker suggests that managers must also take responsibility for relationships, and that crucially includes managing upwards.
Managing your boss.
Yes. The book, Managing Your Boss, outlines the importance of truly understanding your boss's goals, their pressures, their strengths, their weaknesses, their preferred work style, and then developing a relationship based on mutual expectations, dependability, honesty. This kind of bidirectional responsibility, fostering trust and clarity across all levels, is absolutely key when you're navigating the hard things of leadership that Horowitz describes. It's about building a web of trust, not just a simple chain of command.
So it's far more than just giving orders. It's deep self-awareness, total accountability, and actively cultivating relationships in every direction, not just down the org chart. And yeah, as the title of his book suggests, Ben Horowitz really speaks to this challenging, often brutal reality of leadership. He acknowledges the immense psychological, the emotional toll of running a company, especially when things go wrong, when everything feels like it's collapsing around you. The struggle is real.
Indeed it is. It's about confronting brutal truths head-on and making incredibly difficult decisions, often with imperfect information and enormous stakes. Kim Scott's radical candor provides a really crucial framework for navigating these difficult conversations, even the most painful ones, like firing someone. It stresses being radically candid, which means caring personally while challenging directly.
Care personally, challenge directly. Okay.
Yeah. It means being empathetic, genuinely concerned for the individual, but also being crystal clear and direct about the performance issues or why the fit isn't right. It reframes a termination not necessarily as a failure of the person, but perhaps as creating an opportunity for them to find a place where they can truly excel, where their talents are better suited. This approach prioritizes the long-term well-being of both the individual and the organization, rather than just avoiding immediate discomfort.
That takes courage.
It does. And another vital concept for navigating tough decisions, essential for intellectual honesty, is having strong opinions, weakly held.
Strong opinions, weakly held. I like that. What does it mean exactly?
It means expressing your positions clearly and strongly, to foster debate, to encourage others to poke holes in your ideas, to really stress test the thinking. But at the same time, being genuinely open to being proven wrong. Being willing to change your mind when presented with better data or a stronger argument. This ensures that the best answer emerges from the discussion, not just the answer championed by the loudest voice or the highest-ranking person. It creates an environment of intellectual honesty and, importantly, psychological safety.
So people feel safe challenging ideas.
Exactly. Now contrast that with the saga of Enron's Dab Hole project, detailed in The Smartest Guys in the Room. That serves as a chilling cautionary tale. Ken Lay, the CEO, personally chaired the task force. But critical problems were systematically ignored. Solutions proposed by people who actually understood the business, like Rebecca Mark, were dismissed due to internal politics, ego clashes. Skilling apparently even threatened to quit if Mark returned. That highlights the immense dangers of failing to confront hard truths, of failing to manage internal dissent effectively. The consequences, as we know, were catastrophic.
A failure of radical candor, among many other things.
Absolutely. Conversely, the description of Steve Jobs working with Tim Cook and Jony Ive in Radical Candor shows something different. It shows how strong, confident, even relatively quiet individuals could effectively challenge Jobs and contribute significantly. It demonstrates that true, effective leadership actually embraces diverse perspectives and constructive challenges, even from those who might seem less overtly dominant.
Okay, so individual leadership is clearly critical, especially in those tough moments Horowitz writes about. But no venture, especially a startup or a rapidly scaling business, is built alone. You absolutely need a collective effort. How do you forge a group of individuals, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, maybe egos, into a truly high-performance team, a team that can withstand the pressure and achieve really ambitious goals together? This feels like it goes beyond just managing tasks.
It absolutely does. It goes deep into the human dynamics, and this is where the human element becomes a collective challenge, not just an individual one. Patrick Lencioni, in his book The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, makes it unequivocally clear. The absence of trust is the foundational dysfunction.
Absence of trust, that's number one.
It's number one. He states it's the most critical part of building a team. It requires team members to achieve vulnerability-based trust, to understand each other, to open up to one another, however touchy-feely that might sound in a business context. This vulnerability-based trust is absolutely essential for everything else, for aligning around common goals, for making collective decisions, for fostering genuine accountability, for engaging in healthy conflict. Without that trust, Lencioni argues, teams are inherently dysfunctional. It leads to fear of conflicts, which leads to lack of commitment, which leads to avoidance of accountability, and ultimately inattention to results. It's like trying to build a house on sand. Everything else eventually crumbles.
Trust as the bedrock. It sounds so simple, almost obvious, but it's so often overlooked in the sheer rush to perform, right? Especially in those high-pressure environments, people might be tempted to protect themselves, put up walls rather than expose any vulnerability. Building that trust, especially during the hard things, must take a conscious, continuous effort.
It absolutely requires discipline and commitment, as emphasized in The Discipline of Teams. It doesn't just happen. Teams need to set clear, compelling goals, often using criteria like SMART goals that are specific, measurable, aggressive yet achievable, relevant, and time-bound. This ensures clarity, focus, prevents the team from being pulled in too many different directions.
SMART goals, right?
Furthermore, effective teams develop an ethic of constructive disagreement. They learn how to have passionate debates about ideas without making it personal. They understand that healthy conflict, when it's rooted in trust and focused on achieving collective goals, actually leads to better decisions and prevents resentment from festering silently. There's often an understanding that the dirty laundry, the disagreements, stay within the team. They present a united front externally. This internal cohesion, this ability to hash things out honestly without fracturing the team, is crucial for navigating complexity.
Constructive disagreement, that's key.
It is. And going back to Team of Teams, that philosophy points directly to how the connectivity of trust and purpose imbues teams with an ability to solve problems that could never be foreseen by a single manager. Solutions emerge as the bottom-up result of interactions, not just from top-down orders. This highlights the immense power of a truly cohesive, trusting team structure to adapt dynamically to those unpredictable environments we talked about. It enables them to tackle challenges far beyond what any single individual could possibly manage alone. It's the collective intelligence, the collective resilience enabled by trust that truly shines.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the personal journey. The founder, the leader themselves. The psychological toll of building a dynamic venture can be immense. It's fraught with moments of self-doubt, isolation, intense pressure. How do you sustain yourself through those hard things that Ben Horowitz so eloquently describes? How do you continually grow as a leader without just completely burning out?
This is perhaps the most personal and often the most overlooked aspect of building a venture. It's easy to focus on the external, the market, the product, the team, and neglect the person at the center. Peter F. Drucker, again in Managing Oneself, stresses the profound importance of deep self-knowledge, understanding your strengths, what you're truly good at, understanding your preferred performance modes, how do you actually learn and work most effectively, and understanding your core values, what truly matters to you. He argues that knowing where you do not belong is just as important as knowing where you do.
Knowing your non-strengths, too.
Exactly. Furthermore, Drucker points out the need for options in our modern knowledge society. He encourages individuals to actively find and develop a second area, maybe a parallel interest, a different skill set, another way to contribute where they can be successful. This is especially important, he notes, when you might be facing an absence of failure rather than outright smashing success in your primary role. Sometimes things just plateau. This foresight in developing parallel interests or skills can provide a vital psychological and professional safety net. It builds resilience beyond just the primary venture. It's about not putting all your psychological eggs in one single high-risk basket.
That's a fantastic insight, especially for anyone on a really demanding path. Building inner strength and resilience, not just through sheer willpower, but through self-awareness, through foresight, through having other outlets. It's about understanding your own personal operating system, isn't it? How you function best, and what actually sustains you through those inevitable, lean, tough times.
Absolutely. And Stephen R. Covey, in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, advocates what he calls an inside-out approach. Focus first on developing your character strength, on making and keeping commitments to yourself before you try to influence others or manage external circumstances. He makes a crucial distinction between management, which is about efficiency, putting first things first day by day, doing things right, and leadership, which is about effectiveness, deciding what those first things actually are, doing the right things based on a clear personal philosophy and vision.
Leadership versus management.
Right. Covey champions Quadrant 2, focus. This means consciously planning, usually on a weekly basis, to prioritize activities that are important but not urgent. Things like building relationships, long-term planning, preventative activities, personal development, self-renewal. These are the things that build long-term capacity, but often get crowded out by the tyranny of the urgent. Focusing here fosters balance and proactivity.
Breaking the cycle of constant crisis mode.
Exactly. He talks about the power of independent will, the uniquely human ability to act rather than to be acted upon. This gives you agency over your circumstances, even when everything feels chaotic and out of control. This self-mastery, this proactivity, is absolutely fundamental to navigating the struggle of building a company, as Horowitz would surely attest. Think about Sam Walton's soul of an operator described in his book. His deep, intrinsic desire to make things work well, then better, than the best they possibly can. That wasn't just about money, it was about the process of continuous improvement, regardless of his outward promoter personality. He found deep satisfaction there.
Satisfaction in the work itself.
Right. Or reflect on the description of Elon Musk, who famously talked a huge game and often struggled to deliver on his promises in time. But he was often given leeway, the book suggests, because his vision was just so much bigger than anyone else's. That audacious vision acted as a powerful motivator for him and others, a kind of buffer against short-term setbacks and failures, a different kind of resilience.
Fueled by vision.
Fueled by vision. And then you have simpler, timeless wisdom. The Millionaire Next Door reminds us that the journey towards wealth, the process filled with setting and achieving goals, is often more satisfying than the destination itself. It emphasizes the intrinsic reward in the act of building and growing. The Richest Man in Babylon points to procrastination as a silent enemy that simply must be recognized and conquered for success, a fundamental yet easily forgotten truth. And finally, Carol Dweck's mindset offers a vital first step for personal growth. You have to first embrace and understand your own fixed mindset tendencies, areas where you believe your abilities are static, in order to consciously move towards a growth mindset. That belief that skills and intelligence can be developed through dedication and hard work is absolutely crucial for a founder's continuous learning, adaptation, and resilience. These personal habits, this deep self-understanding, that's what allows you to lead through the hard things without breaking.
Wow. Okay. From Peter Thiel's really expansive vision of creating blue oceans and building those creative monopolies, to Eric Ries's iterative, grounded methodologies for build, measure, learn, and then layering on Ben Horowitz's intensely personal, often raw account of battling procrastination and navigating the sheer psychological weight, the hard things of leadership. This deep dive has really revealed a powerful, interconnected mosaic of principles for building and leading dynamic ventures. It's so clear that success isn't just about a single brilliant idea. It's this intricate blend of strategic foresight, agile execution, and deeply, deeply human leadership.
Indeed. The journey is undeniably complex. It demands both that grand strategic sweep, that Thiel-like ambition, and the granular daily discipline that Ries emphasizes. It's about deeply understanding your market, constantly embracing innovation and experimentation, fostering that bedrock of trust within your team that Lencioni highlights, and perhaps most importantly, continuously learning and adapting, not just as an organization, but as individuals at every single level. The interplay between these three perspectives, the strategic ambition, the lean execution, and the resilient human leadership that really forms the core of a modern startup playbook.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener, as you consider your own ventures, your own leadership challenges? What's the ultimate takeaway from connecting these really profound insights from Thiel, Ries, Horowitz, and all the others we touched on?
Well, given the ever-accelerating pace of change, the inherent unpredictability in our world, maybe the most crucial power, the most vital capability for any venture and for any leader today isn't just the product or the market or even the strategy. Perhaps it's the relentless commitment to consciously cultivating a culture of deep learning and radical adaptability, not just for the organization as a whole, but embedded within every single individual within it. It's about consciously choosing growth, embracing that growth mindset Dweck talks about, even and especially when you're facing the hardest things Horowitz describes. Because at the end of the day, the ability to learn, to evolve, to stay curious, to adapt, that might be the ultimate sustainable advantage, the one advantage that no competitor can truly replicate. So the final thought is this. What new secret, what new learning, what next adaptation will you choose to uncover next?